You've done a children's book, right, recently, and I want to give you all of the flowers. So tell us about the children's book before we get to this one.
Well, this
It's
one is a children's book.
the
It
children's
is,
book. Okay.
yes, it is upper middle grade. And I think, back when we first started working together, I remember talking to you about Effa and just like, man, this woman has an incredible story. And I wanted to write about it. It took me a while to get to the point of deciding to do it for kids, but that was really intentional. And I mean, even what we're seeing right now in this debate about what can be taught in schools, like, I'm like, yo, this is exactly why I wrote this book, because yeah, we've never, even in the best of circumstances, we've never done a good job of educating students in the classroom, right? White, black, whatever. It's always taking these kind of outside independent means to do that. So I wanted to write a book that talked about, Effa's incredible life and career, but then also wove in a lot of this other stuff, right? There's the Red Summer of 1919, there's Harlem Renaissance, there's, World War II and what that meant, for Black people. What did Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal really mean for Black people? Was it really that helpful for us? All of that is in there. So it's a baseball story, but it is really so much more than that.
All right. So who was Effa Manley? I know just looking at her picture that she was racially ambiguous and able to probably move through the world at that time a lot easier than you or I might have been able to move through the world. So tell us about her story.
Yeah, that is probably a big part, for people who don't even really understand what she did, as a business, as a baseball executive, owning this team with her husband, and negotiating player contracts. All of her players, when it was time to negotiate their contract, they went through Effa, putting together a team that was good enough to win the Negro World Series in 1946. All that stuff is there, but I think for a lot of people who don't really know Effa, they know that she has this weird thing going on, like, was she white, was she Black? And I mean, we have census records that show that her mother, was Black, was mulatto, had some, Black heritage, which means obviously if your mama Black, you Black too. But you're 100% right. Like, she could move through spaces. And I think that absolutely impacted what she was able to do from a community empowerment perspective, right? So before she ever gets to baseball, she leads a boycott of a Harlem department store because they wouldn't hire Black sales clerks. They're in Harlem. Like 70% of their sales receipts are coming from the Black community in Harlem. They won't hire Black people as sales clerks. So Effa puts together, in partnership with the local pastor, this boycott, really, this "Don't Buy Where You Can't Work" campaign that had been happening in other cities. They brought it to Harlem. But the most impactful moment, I think, of that whole ordeal was when she is in the meeting, sitting across from the owner of the store. She's there with this pastor, with a Black attorney, and she's like, look, if you don't hire our Black girls, we care about our Black girls as much as you care about your white girls. And if you don't hire them, what are they going to do? Become prostitutes? And it was this really like jaw-dropping moment that shows her willingness to like say the stuff that needs to be said, regardless of how people might feel about it. But yeah, she's probably only there as a woman in the 1930s because people are looking at her like, what are you really, right? Like, when we fast forward and she's in baseball, she's going toe to toe with Branch Rickey. She's fighting to make sure that even as we approach integration, Black teams are properly compensated for their players, that Black baseball is not lost in the shuffle because all we've said we wanted is to have Black people playing with the white people. She is able to get in rooms and talk to people 100% because she is deemed more acceptable just because of her aesthetic.
We're talking with Andrea Williams. Drew Comments. Drew Bullock is here. Jump in.
Absolutely, jump in like the water's fine. I have a question. Just given this is an interesting story. This is information I just did not know really in detail. I guess my question would be: do you see yourself or some of yourself in Effa, or maybe some similarities there as far as the tenacity and the will to just go against the grain and get things going?
It's funny you asked that. I hadn't really, I always felt a connection to her because when I came out of undergrad, my degree's in sport management, came out of undergrad, wanted to be a GM of a Major League Baseball team. So definitely, like, when I started, my first job out of undergrad was at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City. And that's how I really learned who she was, what she did. So in that regard, at that time, when I still wanted this career in baseball, absolutely. But I actually did another interview. The book came out in January. I did an interview with a friend actually in around February who, mentioned this. She's like, I really feel like, you kind of move like Effa does. And that's because she knows a lot of the work that I do in country music. And I live in Nashville, and so similar, what country music looks like now, what baseball looked like. I mean, now also, but really, in the 30s and 40s, again, before Jackie plays with the Dodgers. And she's like, yeah, like I definitely see some of that. Like, I ain't really worried about what these people think. We're gonna say what needs to be said. Like that really, Effa, the thing that I love most about her was that she wasn't happy just with Jackie. Okay. She wasn't happy with Jackie, with Don Newcomb, with Roy Campanella, with that handful of guys who got to go in first. She was forward thinking in a way that a lot of people aren't when we start talking about Black equity. Are you really there for that handful of people to get theirs, or do you want everybody to be able to come in and get theirs? And that's how Effa moves. And that is 100% what I think, people always, we had Charlie Pride. And who do we have after that? Where are the Black women? Where are the masses of people that can create and build sustainable careers in this space? If we don't have that, I'm not really interested in that one guy who can make a million. That's not enough.
That's
Wow.
real.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, we have a plethora. I think at the CMAs, there was a woman that had an acceptance speech and rattled off all of the Black women that upon whom shoulders she stands or in solidarity with. And I thought that was really powerful because I remember having that conversation on these airwaves. So there's now a whole spate, but we started country music. So it's weird that we're not the face of it. Right. But Drew's question is powerful because, as you juxtapose yourself to Effa Manning, I'm also like, how does an Andrea Williams want to be a GM in baseball when at the time you were coming up, because you're young, you didn't come up in the Hank era, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays era. When you came up, baseball was getting whiter and whiter. Why did you even want to be a GM?
Well, I actually came up in the 90s, and that was, I mean, in no disrespect to the Hank Aaron and the Willie Mays eras, but man, it was on and popping. Like, it was Ken Griffey Jr., like the best that ever did it, in my humble opinion, who not just, I mean, this is like the Michael Jordan era of basketball, and he made baseball dope. Like, he was everywhere in a way, like my kids don't get it, right? Like, they know Steph and LeBron and Patrick Mahomes and all that. And I'm like, yo, like for real. Like, and I pull out my cards and all that stuff. Like, baseball.
Wait, you got baseball cards?
I do. I have they're not allowed to touch them. Like, that is how I am. I'm 39. I'm like, the reason they look this good at 39 is because nobody's ever touched them. So I love you, but you're no different. Like, can't touch them. But no, it was just a different era. It was definitely, so different from today in the sense that there were multiple, Black people on every team, really stars in their own right, where you, as a kid, when I grew up, the Black guys in my neighborhood, like, they played baseball. They played basketball and football too, but they played baseball. Like, my sons play baseball, and I don't think they've ever been on a team with another Black kid. It's just a different thing. And there are layers to that. There's definitely a financial cost for sure. We got to talk about, what it means to go into neighborhoods and make it possible, make it easy, right? It is not as easy to find a Black baseball team as it is to find a Black AAU team. There are Black baseball teams out there, to be sure, but I don't think we're being honest with ourselves if we don't discuss the fact that kids aren't into it as much as they used to be. And a lot of that is because they can't see themselves in it the way they see themselves in this other sport. So yeah, that was the goal. And then I came off of that real quick. So
okay. I actually like what you're saying right here, because like my question to you for real though, okay. and this will be the last one here. How is your actual swing though? We understand the baseball knowledge is out the park. What the skills looking like? You know what I'm saying?
I did play softball. I was nice. I'm gonna say that. Like I was nice. I played basketball for a minute, but I was like, this ain't my thing. I'm really gonna go hard on the softball tip. But like for real, for me, I realized like around like the start of high school age, when it gets serious, when it is like your job and it's like you are spending as much time in the sport as you are in the books. And I'm like, yeah, this ain't for me. And I would go to baseball games and I'm like looking, at the signage on the outfield fence. And I'm like, yo, are they really getting a return on this investment? Like, how are they putting together these stadium finance deals? Like when you hear about these, I remember where I was when I found out that Alex Rodriguez signed what was at the time the biggest contract, 10 years for $252 million when he went to Texas. I remember where I was when the Mariners lost Randy Johnson, lost Ken Griffey Jr. So all of these things, I was always really interested in what was happening outside of just the on the field stuff. And this is, of course, now we all talk, even the most lay person is talking contracts and deals and all that stuff because we hear about it so much through sports talk radio. But yeah, I was like the 13-year-old into that stuff. So
that's dope. See, that's the thing. Kenny Griffey Jr. definitely made it look cool to me too. But I, swinging and trying to hit that ball, so swinging and miss. It's like you gotta have more like just respect for what those baseball players do. Like
it looks easy, right?
Look.
My 9-year-old, when he started, he was like, man, I didn't know it was going to be this hard. And he's like quarterback and is memorizing plays and all that stuff. But like, yeah, baseball's another thing.
Shout out to Bo Jackson and Dion.
Right.
Andrea, I don't know if you can stick around. Can you stick around? Because I want to have a sports conversation with you and Drew.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right, because Steph Curry just signed his second $200 million contract. LeBron and them with the Lakers just put together a team that people are trolling because of their age, but I have some predictions on that. And we got the Olympics that will be ending on Sunday, and I just want to know what this means for America. But also, I believe, did you go to an HBCU as well?
I did not.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Drew did, but we're seeing a whole lot of players now, including Shaquille O'Neal's 2 kids are going. They left LSU, or the daughter just left LSU to go to Texas Southern to play under Cynthia Cooper. We have Master P's son. We have coaches now in Dion and I keep forgetting Taj's husband's name, Eddie. Eddie George. That's hilarious. That's
Taj's husband. My God.
Husband. Mind your business, Drew. All right. So I want to talk about what are the implications as we talk about Effa Manley literally breaking down barriers. There's something shifting right now in sports. And I think that this is a microcosm of what's happening in this country, because as sports go, as we see, so does the rest of the world. So let's talk about that. Drew Comments is here.
Yo.
Drew Bullock and Andrea's sticking around. Andrea Williams, great, one of the best writers I've come into contact with in my career, and this is, I'm not just, personally working with people who can turn around copy and make it good. This woman's one of the best. So I'm looking forward to baseball's leading lady. And if you have children, young people or older people, because I prefer actually people who write for young people, because they usually are better anyway, because your attention to detail is mwah. Effa Manley and the rise and fall of the Negro leagues. All right, so let's talk sports. We got Drew's an athlete. Apparently, Andrea's an athlete as well. I didn't realize that. Thank you for that.
I'm not claiming that it's been a minute. I'm just saying, back in the day, though.
Own your truth. Own your truth.
You never stop. You never stop being an athlete. Once an athlete, always an athlete. All right.
I'm working on the next generation is what I'm over here doing.
So. Okay, you producing literally right now. You're one short of a basketball team, so you need to get busy.
We're done, but we're also they're great athletes, but also conditioning them so that they can want to play and they can want to own their own team and they can want to be in the front office and all the things that not enough of us are thinking about. So that's where I'm expending my energy right now.
Before we get into the what's happening now, what inspired you to want to be a GM of a baseball team of all things, aside from loving Ken Griffey? That aspiration, that is not normal.
Yeah, I think it was loving Ken Griffey definitely like made me want to be in the sport. Just this kind of weird, like paying attention to all the things that are happening. also I grew up in Kansas City, which is a small market club, right? So, when I went off to school and studied, I remember saying, like, I don't want to work for the Yankees, right? Like, I don't want to, work for it. Like, a lot of times, like, I knew people that had, like, were working their way up through, like, marketing departments. And I'm like, Yankees tickets, like, sell themselves. Like, how fun is that? Like, I wanted to be in a small market, like, really fighting to make, a team that people didn't care about good. That was really what it was about for me. So I don't know. I've always had that, like, kind of underdog mentality. Like, I will go out of my way to get over to help the people who ain't nobody checking for. So
it's more fun to get the upset than it is to see the favorite win all the time.
100%. My brackets every year, I'm upset the whole time. Like, yes, absolutely.
I feel that. I'm the same way.
Much in the last several years in the NCAAs. I'm just pointing that out. But all right, so put your GM hat on for a second. You're the Lakers. Are you loving these last moves that brought Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, fill in the blank, to the Lakers? Were those good GM moves if you, Ms. Williams, were GM of the Lakers?
I think it depends on, I think as fans, we try to make these blanket assumptions about all these teams in all these leagues. And, like, we assume to know what their end goal is. Like, we think that, like, you're supposed to put together a team that can win and then be on top for, like, the next decade, because that's what we want, right? Like, we got our team. I need you to make moves for the now and for the long term. And these GMs aren't always thinking that, right? Like, the Lakers may 100% feel like, all right, there may not be longevity on this team because of their ages, but if we can be on top right now, if we can generate some buzz right now, like, this is La La Land, right? If they can get the flashy names and sell some tickets right now, that may be all they care about. Now, I don't know. So I love how you're putting me on the spot for this, but I when I hear people talk about, whatever moves any team is making, that is the biggest thing for me, is that when you get behind the doors in these front offices, their motives may not be what you think they are. They may just be trying to free up cap space, right? Like, we see this all the time with teams, like, decimating their rosters. And we're like, wait a minute, why aren't you trying to win? That's not the goal right now. That might not be the goal for 3, 4, 5 years. So we have to take that into consideration when we're contemplating these moves.
But question, since you had the underdog mentality, just looking specifically at the Lakers, are you appalled, flabbergasted, befuddled? Like, just to see the amount of superstars you got. LeBron, you're gonna have Russell Westbrook, you're gonna have Melo now. You know what I'm saying? Like, is this offensive to you?
I mean, yes, like
I knew it. I told you.
Short of it, in the 90s, man, like, you could turn on any team. Like, they people like Sean and Gary in Seattle, they didn't really win, but they were fun to watch, right? Like, Carmelo and John Stockton, they didn't get a ring, but they were fun to watch. There was talent everywhere. Like, as a fan, I am anti this 100%. But I also know that times change. I am all about athlete empowerment. I'm all about what these dudes need to do to protect their legacy, to do what I will never be against that 100%.
But now Golden State is not underdog in the West. That's interesting.
No. But you didn't ask this question. Who are you a fan of? Because I suspect you're not a LeBron James fan.
Okay, so I have a book with LeBron coming out on August 31st. Go buy that.
Ain't gonna mess with my bag. Ain't gonna mess with my bag, girl. Sure.
All right, do tell Ms. Williams about this book you have. So I'll shift the heat off of you. You don't have to answer nor confirm what I believe, but go ahead.
Then she got kids, trying to feed them kids. Ain't mess with that bag.
No. Let me move away from this. I already said danger, Will Robinson. All right. When is this book coming out with LeBron?
The book with LeBron comes out August 31st. It's fiction. It's still for middle grade, so same age range as Baseball's Leading Lady, though. Again, Baseball's Leading Lady, 100% adults can read it, get into it, learn from it. But this is for a middle grade audience too. It's fiction. It follows a group of kids playing on a basketball team, dealing with life off the court, on the court, coming together to make the whole thing work. Before I started working on it, I actually flew out to Akron to his I Promise school, and saw the incredible work. And I will say this, and I don't mind saying this, because when the book was announced, I wrote an essay for USA Today, and I'm like, if we are, it's a different era, right? Like Michael Jordan could walk around and just sell his shoes and be real quiet on everything else that was happening in the world. It's a different era right now. And if we're going to talk about LeBron, whether you are a fan or not, you're not talking about how he is changing lives. And I'm talking about whole families. Like, it is not, let me take care of the kids that come through the door in the morning. We're going to feed them breakfast and lunch and then give them some snacks to take home later. Like, if you have a kid, if you have a nephew, if you have a grandchild who is in this school and you never got your GED, they're bringing you in for free classes. Once you graduate, you are automatically set up with a career counselor and guaranteed, I think, at least an interview with JP Morgan. Like, the work that he is doing, forget anything else. You got to talk about that too. Let that help determine whether you're a LeBron fan or not. So, drops August 31st.
What's the name of it?
We Are Family. We Are Family. Same tagline. If you've seen them online with the shirts that the kids wear, like in a lot of their promo videos, We Are Family, comes from that.